Okay, so we talked about organizations, as part of their security planning, need to have a security policy. Well, Georgia Tech has a computer and network use policy. Well, we're talking about do's and don'ts, what is okay to do and what you should not do. So let's quickly sort of look at some things that are there in the Georgia Tech computer and network use policy. Well, it does articulate, does talk about what some of the guiding principles are. Why does the policy look the way it does? Well, first of all, we want the policy guiding principle is that we want to protect important IT resources that Georgia Tech has. So when you protect, you're talking about protecting the data, the services, and things like that, which are enabled by those resources. Another guiding principle is that we don't let anything illegal happen that involves our computer systems, our IT systems. So you should actually, so these are the guiding principles, but you should read the policy. And here we're just going to talk about sort of a couple of quick highlights, things that you might think jump out and say, why do we have this? So it talks about copyright and intellectual property, actually. So why is it talking about? Of course, as a research university, Georgia Tech creates intellectual property and so on, and that intellectual property resides on our computers. But at the same time, in university campuses, there used to be a problem where people would download music. In particular, they would download illegal music, and universities got into trouble because of that. So we obviously saying that, addressing that explicitly in the policy. Remember, the policies is about do's and don'ts, and if there's copyrighted material or there's intellectual property, how that should be handled. Of course, it talks about that. Interestingly, it also talks about export controls. While universities have people from all over the world, and people work with counterparts in other countries and things like that. So when there's exchange of things across national boundaries, of course, export control becomes an issue. And that's why it's interesting that it makes its way into this policy. But again, this is sort of the guiding principle here, is that if there are any legal requirements, we are okay with them. Georgia Tech's policy actually also, remember one of the things we said, we have to make sure that there are people who are responsible for it and can be held accountable and things like that. So it does address responsibility for securing the resources or the assets that we have. And it's sort of a distributed responsibility at Georgia Tech. When you look at sort of the larger network, Office of Information Technology, which is a central organization for the entire university, well, they're responsible for it. But if you look at individual devices, laptops or servers or desktops, well, that is the responsibility of the unit or the individual whose machine it is. So unit, for example, School of Computer Science or the College of Computing, for example, would be responsible for the computers that are used by their staff, faculty, and students. But network-wide, protecting the Georgia Tech network, that is the responsibility of the central office. As I said, you should read the policy and all the different aspects that are covered by it.